Welcome to Peacebuilding Initiatives with José Barzola. Peacebuilding Initiatives are collaborative ways of developing healthy, positive relationships via dialogue, cross-cultural understanding, and exploring ways to shift our own perspective to build compassion and empathy within our communities. Thank you for joining us today. On today's episode, we have our good friend, Dr. Jude Antonyappan, who is a seasoned professor at California State University, Sacramento, where she brings over 25 years of experience weaving together law, social work, and education. With a PhD in social welfare and a Juris Doctor. Her work centers on social justice, ethical leadership, and real-world learning. She's passionate about helping students and communities bridge critical inquiry with compassionate action. She also leads in faculty development, innovative pedagogy, with advanced training in quality of learning and teaching, AI-enhanced education, institutional transformation. But at her core, she's a mother, a grandmother, and a seeker of wisdom, drawing strengths from life's beauty, even in chaos. In today's conversation, she shares her insights on integrative intelligence, how we can live with intention, empathy, and clarity amidst uncertainty and division, which is so timely for the times we're in. But as I was recalling recently, it's just timely for life in general. So I really am looking forward to today's conversation. I thank you for coming back and joining us. Uh, and yeah, so we'll get started a little bit on integrative intelligence, living amicably amidst the chaos. So thank you so much for coming back and being here with us again.
Thank you, Jose. I very much enjoy our dialogue because it's truly a conversation between two aware individuals. So thank you.
Thank you. Um, to get us started today, maybe you can kind of get us in the right mindset and maybe in your view, what are the components that constitute the framework of integrative intelligence for living amicably?
Well, integrative intelligence itself is a concept that Howard Gardner, a psychologist, introduced. And until Gardner's research, for a long time, we used to think intelligence is composed of only abstract intelligence. But he introduced the notion of multiple intelligence. And that has been interpreted as 7 types of intelligence, 8 types of intelligence, even up to 12 different types. But fundamentally, he posited that when we think of a human being, it's not just the capacity for abstract processing that matters, but what matters is the ability of the individual to integrate in the kinesthetic intelligence and the abstract intelligence and the emotional intelligence, the social intelligence, which includes interpersonal intelligence, intrapersonal intelligence, and the existential intelligence. So, and music intelligence, linguistic intelligence, for instance, he talked about all of that. But he also said that some individuals possess the capacity for integrating all of this remarkably well. All of us have the capacity to integrate all of this. And that integrative approach to life is required for us to have a actualized life, which brings us to the second concept, which is self actualization. And because if we really think of ourselves as a person who is capable of all of this, because we all appreciate music, we listen to music, we speak language, or at least one language, some of us multiple languages, and we use our body in productive ways, that's kinesthetic intelligence. We interact with our peers and our family, and that's interpersonal intelligence, and we interact with ourselves. Most of the time, we are actually having conversations with ourselves. So we really have to like us, and we have to be comfortable with the company that we provide to ourselves. And so if we extend Gardner's conception of integration, like for instance, Sri Aurobindo, with integral yoga in India, and J. Krishnamurti in India, he talked about integrating the mind and the ego and the spirit all into one. Several individuals have talked about this. In fact, in the Bay Area, there's an integrative medicine institute, and there is an institute of integrative intelligence. So this concept is taking off, but many interpret it only from a therapeutic point of view. I am, or passionate about this idea that integrative intelligence should be the focus of all our education and all our training. And for a while, our schools would have all of this. Music was required, and reading was required, and capacity to engage in productive relationship without bullying, peer mediation. That was all required. But now we are cutting funds for all these crucial components, especially in public schools. Private schools still offer that. And therefore, our children are not fully equipped to look at life as a holistic phenomenon, as an integrative phenomenon. And parents don't have the time to be able to sit with the children and listen to music together as a family and enjoy the benefits of natural food, organic food, and talk about, our family ancestry and different kinds of religion. So our children are simply, taken to school, dropped off. I mean, with a lot of love. Parents, we should give credit to parents with so much love and attention and focus and protecting our children from all the harm that could come their way. Parents do all of that, but they themselves don't have the time to look at themselves integratively. So they themselves don't have the time to actualize their potentials. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, for instance, Maslow talked about that human beings have various needs, and they're arranged in a hierarchical order, starting with our biological needs, and then for food and water, and then our need for security, and then our need for belonging, and then we have this need for self-esteem, to see ourselves in our own eyes as worthy of respect, dignity, as worthy of celebration and enjoyment, because each human being has so much to give. And Gardner and Maslow are individuals who actually realized the beauty of human life, the transcendent nature of human life, and the epitome of human understanding, evolving to be this self-actualization of this human being, not just an object. So if we are to do that, we need to have certain principles, those of living. Those principles will hold us good, not only during peaceful time, but during chaotic times, as this was, as the one that we live in now. That is the essence of it. So that we may, sort of explore further into, well, what are those principles likely to be, given the fact that we live in we live in chaotic times. How do we live amicably? I mean, of course, we can talk about it for hours. We can write a book on it. And but if you distill everything that would go into an amicable life, it requires certain X factors, and that's what we will discuss in the next segment.
No, thank you. Thank you. And I think one of the things that really resonates with me is something that I keep coming across with a lot of folks about. Um, don't forget to be kind to yourself. Don't don't forget to take care of yourself. We're such healers and caregivers, and
Yes.
it's part of that integrative intelligence of caring for our community and everyone that comes by us. Sometimes we forget to take care of
Mhm.
ourselves.
Mhm.
So, and I love how you talked about, that internal conversation we tend to have. And so that's part of it right there. And so you refer to Gardner's notion of integrative intelligence and Maslow's hierarchy of needs. How do Maslow's steps for self-actualization contribute to developing amicable integrative approaches to living amidst chaos?
Absolutely. I mean, Maslow talked about self-actualization as the, totality of experience. So as I said, like, when let's imagine, somebody is trapped in an island. Tom Hanks was that movie. I forget the name of the movie. You remember that movie film where he is, he's a FedEx CEO or something owner, and falls. What is that? Yeah,
Castaway, Castaway.
Castaway, exactly. And so he's there and he's shocked and he misses his good fiance and he finds a picture of her and puts a picture on a little tree and after his initial confusion passes, he goes looking for food. and he finds coconuts and he finds coconut water. And then so he drinks and he quenches his thirst and he eats. And then he realizes he needs some place for security, like housing. And so he gets some, palm leaves, and he weaves them and makes a temporary roof with some, wooden post. And then he realizes he needs a companion. And so he finds a soccer ball that comes to the beach and by the waves, and he picks up the soccer ball and puts it on a pole, and he gives it a name, and that's his companion. So Maslow said, human beings prioritize their needs. Although this is something that we are finding out now, typically, Maslow's hierarchy of needs is represented as a pyramid, the base being biological needs, the next being security and housing and safety, and the next one being a sense of belonging, community. We are social beings, so we need community. The next one being self-esteem, and the apex of the pyramid being self-actualization. But now we are realizing actually Maslow never drew a pyramid. It just the others who came after him arranged these needs in such a manner. But judging from the depiction as very beautifully depicted in that film, Castaway, our first instinct when we are deprived of everything is as we are withering away as our bodies, we want to nourish our bodies, our existence. We want food, we want water, and we want some security, we want some housing, and then we want companionship. And then, of course, we want to have a sense of being acknowledged as someone worthy of existence, as our life being dignified. And that is our self-esteem. Once we have that, we want to continue to expand and actualize our potential in so many ways. And so, for instance, Robert Heinlein said that human beings are capable of complete understanding simultaneously, right? That is called as grok. I think the X or someone in the artificial intelligence companies use the term grok, and I think they will even produce grok AI, just a term that they borrowed. But it's Heinlein who actually, introduced the term, which is human beings are capable of understanding simultaneously all at once our empathy, our empathetic understanding, our experience of life, our perception, and our judgment. So when we have that comprehensive understanding simultaneously of a phenomenon, of a human being, then we are self-actualizing ourselves, an element of self-actualization. There is this harmonious understanding with our fellow beings. When we deeply understand that our fellow beings, every one of them, is just as much deserving of the comfort that we have, just as much deserving of the human rights that we have, just as much deserving of in the sense of security and safety and family and friends that we have, then we would actively want to actualize that, because we are creative people. That's what both Garner and Maslow and others, deep thinkers have said. We are creative, and we create love, or we can create or we can destroy. When human beings are deprived of their basic acknowledgement of their dignity, they develop this defense mechanisms, as Freud said, and as others have postulated, which gives the opposite of this creative urge, this creative tendency. And then, for instance, someone talked about one of the, I believe the president of Hungary, who is Viktor Orban, and who is known, I'm not saying anything that's controversial, he's known to have this, changed his country into somewhat of a, anti-democratic manner. But then someone did a study of his childhood and have discovered that his father physically, punished him severely to the point of being perhaps considered as abusive, and he didn't feel valued. And so they did a trajectory of everything he has done since he has become a person of power. He wants to, for instance, he contributes tremendous amount of state money apparently to his village to create buildings and to create a sort of, this sort of celebratory acknowledgement of his leadership as him having come from that village, as if to say that somehow he has, control. Now he's controlling that village that was standing mute at the time when his father was ill-treating him, right? That is the sort of explanation that those who have studied similar instances of other people's lives too, like they have done studies of Hitler and how he had this hateful urge to control. And so many dictators have had the childhood experience of being controlled by this very strong authoritative figure, and they want to emulate that and they become narcissistic and they emulate that in order to overcome their own anxiety about having been controlled during their formative years. So none of us are programmed, or we are not hardwired as human beings to expect our own caretakers, our significant adults in our life, to be nasty to us, to be, so unloving. We somehow believe, we are programmed to believe that our caretakers will protect us, that so children who are not securely attached to their caretakers would wake up every now and then to make sure that they are there. And we know about, secure attachment, avoidant attachment, and all that, Bowlby's theory of attachment too. So in that sense, when we are talking about self-actualization and the principles of living amicably from self-actualization, first starts with knowing ourselves. Why do we have this tendency to not see, sometimes, not all of us, but some of us, and especially those who have this dictatorial urge or controlling urge, to see life as a conquering phenomenon and not as a phenomenon where we coexist with our fellow brothers and sisters. We coexist with our community members, with our, our fellow citizens, with our citizens of the world. And instead, why do we starting from Alexander the Great, and here the story that I said in our last the spiritual intelligence segment, that he conquered the whole world, but he said at the end that please make sure that you bury me with my hands outside, because I want the world to know that even Alexander the Great, who conquered the whole world, left this world empty-handed. So cognitively, we know that our life is self-actualizing when we are connected with others. And psychodynamically, we are not privy to all the knowledge that goes into understanding ourselves, that goes into, understanding where do we come, where does this anxiety of, having control over other human beings come from? Because it is a form of, controlling mechanism that stems from the anxiety of the unknown, the fear of the unknown. So if we know that life is a peaceful process, those who meet us wish us well, they don't intend to harm us, then the anxiety is reduced. Then the human flight or fight response pattern will also be reduced. We'll live in a homeostasis, a sense of homeostasis. So anything that threatens our equanimity would be considered as something that we can deal with by understanding the components of it. And of course, as humans, they trace it back to our years when human beings coexisted in wilderness and all that. But we've come a long way. I think it's possible for children to be trained. My children went to Waldorf school. I told you my younger son was like, we had some bullied in school and so, but even otherwise, I love the Waldorf pattern of education, which gives primary importance to children's gradual, this playful, creative way of, in learning. But my daughter didn't like it. And so she went to IB, which is International Baccalaureate Program, and then which she absolutely loved, and, even in high school and then onwards. So every child is different, but for the parent to respond to the child's needs, if a child needs an environment where they need more support, more understanding, I don't think our society is equipped to be able to help our children self-actualize. I think that is the sad part of our society because we are the richest nation in the world, and we should be able to create our schools as environments of comfort and security and growing as self-actualized beings, and one of our presidents at the California State University talked about the process of self-actualization as being the goal of all higher education. I was just literally jumping out of my seat because that's what I believe. All our students need to have this comprehensive understanding of, art and music. And Berkeley is doing a phenomenal job. They're saying our art department, just today I read something about it. Berkeley's art department is not just in one part of the campus, it's everywhere. There is art coexisting with hard science and soft science and exploration and education and languages, and that's how institutions of higher education need to be built. And Sac State, California State University is too in the same way. There is always some kind of exhibition going on, some historical narrative, or some a training program. So that kind of exploration of the human capacities and creating opportunities for self-actualization is the goal of higher education. But are we achieving that? And so how would we achieve that? What are the principles? So I have these, set of principles. At least we should focus on the realization that we have so much to give, each one of us, whether we have developmental disability or whether we have physical disability or we are differently abled, I should say, all of us have something to give. So how do we help each individual, to live in a sense of awe of life itself? As long as we breathe in and breathe out, there is constant exchange with the environment, constant exchange, interaction with life itself, the creative process of life. So therefore, how do we create that opportunity? Second principle would be the joy of living. Just the fact that we can, have an experience with another human being like we have now in a dialogue and exploring, not for our own benefit to some extent. Of course, everything we do for our own benefit, but at the same time, sharing what you and I have learned through our experience with a wider community. And if it is, if it lands on somebody's search for something that's relevant to their life, good, but we don't have any expectations. This process itself is so joyful. It is so meaningful. Even if it doesn't have an outcome, it's absolutely important to do this. So that is the joy of living. Every moment being a joy of exchange that is purposeful, that in itself is worthy. It doesn't have to have an end. And the third principle is how do we see ourselves as beings of concentration? Because one of the problems during these times of chaos is constant flow of information. There is so much information that our children are constantly on their cell phone or iPad or on their, game playing machines and various things. And also the social media is distracting them and television is distracting them. And I was appalled the other day to see, I'd hardly ever watch television. And because now I'm at my son's home and there are some, news. My younger son Sachi watches it sometimes, and so I'm not used to this kind of commercial. Most of the commercials are, by the way, about pharmaceutical companies and or take this medicine and that medicine, and then they say in small prints the side effects are such and such horrible side effects. But then they have commercials that are geared toward children. And skincare for children, that was one of the commercials for teenage skincare. I was appalled because not all children have the money to buy all this skincare. And during teenage years, they compare each other with others and themselves with others. And, when they have acne or skin trouble, it tremendously harms their self-image and self-esteem. Therefore, knowing that, I cannot believe any adult would think that it is worth making. I don't care how many millions of dollars of money that they want to make by making a commercial that has the potential to make at least a group of children feel insecure and unaffordable skincare routine. So when I say our children are not being provided the opportunities to focus, concentrate, concentration itself as an admirable, purposeful activity. It's because they're constantly torn between, being treated as objects of commodification, whether it's physical or emotional. And they also tell them, oh, in order to feel good, they have to do this, they have to do that. So therefore, that's a symbol of the chaotic times we live in. So living amicably for our children means, first of all, having a tremendous amount of self-confidence in their own self. That they have this joy of living, that they have this opportunity, they have this capacity to concentrate and listen to a story. Or, my granddaughters were here this Sunday, and Saturday, and I was teaching them the traditional Indian dance called the Bharatanatyam. I used to do it, and just as a way of, not for performing, just as a way of learning, because it's very mathematical, all the steps, and so it is a focus, completely concentrated activity. You need to be concentrated. Every step has different rhythm and different meaning, and so I was teaching them that. And I was, sort of impressed by my youngest granddaughter, especially, how focused she was in that. And she really wanted to learn that. So, and also, how many next one is, and can we look at our culture and discard everything that is of violence, violence in words, violence in action, violence in viewpoint? So those are some of the basic principles that we need to have in order to have amicable interactions. Otherwise, we will continue to have pointless violence, and we are becoming the most violent society of all the developed nations in many ways, in terms of number of guns per person per American, and all of that goes with the components that go with the notion of the amicability that is free of violence and emotional violence, verbal violence and physical violence, economic violence. And when we deprive someone of their livelihood, that's economic violence. And social violence, when we tarnish someone's reputation falsely, knowing that it is malicious, and that is social violence. Social undermining is a form of violence. So we every portion of intelligence that Gardner talked about, there's an opposite element of violence. So almost as if we can equate presence of intelligence as absence of violence in that regard. That is the framework as in essence.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think one thing, just as I hear you talk about integrative intelligence and Maslow and
Mhm.
the importance of what I'm hearing a lot is sometimes what we talk about is as modeling and
Mhm.
and how important it is to so the time you spend with your granddaughters, um, there's we talked about you talked about social media a bit, and I find with life there's always lots of things that are drawing our attention.
Mhm.
And so how beautiful it is that they're like, oh, we're going to give grandma our attention. We want to learn this valuable skill set.
Mhm.
And so just constantly juggling that, but also the modeling as you are a role model. Everyone's a role model to, sometimes you don't even know who's actually observing,
Yeah.
who's watching. And this kind of got me thinking also about, because you talk about what's happening, the chaos that's happening, and one of the part of the chaos is also this whole push toward anti-DEI work. And and as a person of color, one of the things that I've resonated with is looking at the mentors that I've had, and many times they've been from various cultural paths and various ethnicities, various genders as well, and but but having multiple mentors where it's like, oh, this person was great for this skill set or this other skill set, um, but also just being able to see people that we've heard this so many times that look like me in leading a classroom, leading
Mhm.
an institution. It's
Mhm.
very powerful.
Mhm.
A place where you're learning, yes, at home, you're getting all these beautiful lessons about your heritage, and then you go to a place that's supposed to be, you're going to be there for 4, maybe more years if you go to grad school in the same place.
Mhm.
Um, and so you wanted to have that comfort of home, and so you
Mhm.
try to hopefully the idea would be to have folks that would respect or
Yes.
nurture those
Mhm.
traditions, that heritage that you've been, and it's not possible lately with everything that's happening. And so thank you. Just thank you for you know
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
know you're talking about it in a more academic sense, and so I just kind of wanted to put it out there for our listeners that that really what we're talking about, the importance of representation, the importance of the work that everyone's doing, whether you're picking up the trash, whether you're
Mhm.
in the classroom teaching a class, it's all important work. And you're, there's modeling, there's representation, there's also just there's connection. And I think
Mhm.
that's really at the end of the day, making those connections. And so you talked a little bit about the next question was around like how do you expand the connection between internal amicability and working through the conflicts of the chaotic times. I'm just wondering if you have some additional thoughts to that because there, I mean, we haven't even delved into like what chaos. So we're just talking about chaos as an overall larger umbrella. I mentioned a little bit about DEI. Obviously, depending upon when you hear this, there's going to be some new chaos. So yeah, how do you, I mean, part of what I'm hearing is also the power of the community to kind of
Yes.
get us through these challenging times. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, I'm so glad you asked that question, Jose, because chaos could be interpreted in many different ways, right? Chaos could be a full-blown war, but chaos could also be at the micro level, at the meso level, and at the macro level. At the micro level, if you say we have family chaotic environment where parents don't agree on child rearing, there is domestic violence that's going on, and they're based on our own societal conditionings. And then at the meso level, at the school, for instance, I mean, you talked about DEI, and it's a well established fact that minority children are suspended and expelled at far more higher rates than children from the majority groups, especially, children in socioeconomically underprivileged neighborhoods are punished severely, and they are overwhelmingly represented in youth detention centers. And so we have data. It's not that we don't know, the level of chaos that is happening at the family level. If we valued that data, evidence-based approach, as a society, we would say we are creating, two pathways to address this. We are telling parents, if you have children who are in school, you can leave your workplace at 3 o'clock to go pick up your children, go home, spend time with your children to help them do their homework and be with them and ask about their day and have dinner together and then have your recreation or whatever. You will be paid until 5 o'clock, or you will be compensated. Your salary would be higher. Either way, because that is investing in our future public good. Children are public good. They are the ones who are going to be our future soldiers, our teachers, our doctors, our community members, our lawyers, our janitors. And I want to go back to something you said, beautiful, which is no matter what you do, what your work is, it is absolutely vital, of equal importance to the society. And the president's job is just as important as a teacher's job. And a teacher's job is just as important as someone who cleans streets. It was Martin Reverend King who said, even a street sweeper should sweep the streets so well that the hosts of heaven would pause and say, there goes a street sweeper who did his job well. That is part of the total quality management, like the Edward Deming movement that you might have heard of, which is everything we do, we are doing it with such quality. And our organizations and schools and communities and our political systems should be managed with such quality conscience, conscious of and aware of the well-being of everyone else on the team. And then everything would flourish. The Japanese companies took the notion of Deming's total quality management and, produced increasingly reliable products and, made enormous amount of, progress within a very short time. But unfortunately, in our country, we sort of let it go. There was a time in the 90s when total quality management and quality circles was, and leading with excellence and organizational excellence were all valued, but we're not doing that much, in that realm right now. So when you ask about what are the kinds of chaos? So I said the micro level chaos at the family, and we have data. And so now we have thousands of children. The data says like millions, in fact, but it varies depending upon the time, of children who go home with a key attached to their chain around their neck, which is called latchkey children. And they go and take care of themselves because their parents are not there. And these children who care for themselves are most likely to get into conflict with the law enforcement during the times of between the times of 3 and 6 o'clock before their parents come home. So we know that. And then we spend more money punishing them, keeping them in youth detention centers, and then traumatizing them. And they leave those centers far more hardened as individuals than when they went in. And so, as a society, one has to ask ourselves, why do we continue to allow this level of chaotic interference in our families' functioning? There is a political, argument that women's reproductive choice should be taken away and there should be incentives for producing children. But there is no discussion in the current bill regarding childcare, after school care, children's health, home visiting, protection of, the parents' rights to stay home with a child who is sick. and protection of parents' rights in terms of attending parent-teacher conferences. When my children were in the public school, I was very active in the parent-teacher association, PTA, and also was a member of the school district's advisory board, where sometimes I would be there till 10 o'clock to participate in meetings, to advise on curriculum, various things. I was happy to do that. I introduced a chess club in my, son's elementary school because I thought chess improves connective thinking. I was a chess champion, before I came to the United States for women's not at the higher level, at the university level. And so I introduced all of that because I saw the utter lack in public schools of the focus on children's overall well-being. And there were parents, when I was a member of all of this, who would never show up for PTA, not because they did not want to, but because they just could not. Their work is such, they work sometimes graveyard shifts and sometimes they work two jobs just to be able to pay rent and, to be feed their children nutritious food. Now they want to take away school lunches. Anyway, I don't want to go there, but at the meso level as well, we are living in chaotic times. We want to, cut funds for Medicaid, where, families above a certain poverty level now will not qualify, but as opposed to their qualifications before, and children were enrolled in Medicaid and Children's Health Incentive Program. There are various ways in which we can reduce the level of chaos, but we're not doing that. That requires social policy choices. So, what can individuals do? And at the macro level policy changes, that's when we have citizen groups, we have advocacy groups, we have capacity building of our communities, we have block bodies to discuss how we can help each other in terms of helping our children be self-actualized, helping our children develop integrative intelligence. And I'll give you one more example. For instance, Shaquille O'Neal, who is a basketball player. I absolutely, it's a fan of many basketball teams, but only because I raised my children as you know, mostly as a single mom, and so they were very interested in sports. My son played basketball, and he was a division champion in his private Waldorf school when he graduated, and so we would watch all the games. And so we followed Shaq's career quite a bit. And so the other day I read he was very afraid to play. I believe it was with the Mets, New York Mets, when he played a game with them, or when he was with them. I don't remember exactly. In that he didn't play well. So his stepfather took him for a ride the next day and said, I noticed you did not play well. Why is that yesterday? And he said he just got scared. He said, okay, I'm going to take you to meet someone. And he took him to meet a homeless family that was homeless on a street corner and said, I want to go talk to them and ask them why they are homeless. And so his first stepfather stayed in the car and Shaq went and talked with them. And he found out that the father lost his job and they tried to stay in their apartment and they got evicted. And now they're not able to find a job. And so they're at the street corner trying to, actually ask for, some money so they can feed their child. So Shaq was completely shocked when there are further details to the story, which where he realized it was not the fault of the family at all that they are homeless. So he immediately called someone and said, hey, can you rent an apartment like for a year or something, for this. And then he called someone else and can you get a job for this gentleman? And he helped that family. And then he told his father, stepfather, he's not scared at anything because his stepfather so told them, you want to see something really scary, you go talk to them. So for many families, not knowing how they're going to feed their children, are they going to be evicted? And even if they don't have children, if they are individual single adults, that they are able to remain in their home. Those are all extremely scary questions That's why I wanted to start with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If we don't have a basic assurance of our basic needs, we cannot proceed further with building our self-esteem and building our, no matter how joyful we are at living, no matter how grateful we are for the life itself, no matter how, exploratory we are in exploring all the possible avenues. But the another concept that we want to raise our children is to never give up. Life is going to throw a curveball, there's no question. But to never give up and also to trust, despite even if your trust is being broken, still be cautious, but still trust life. Trust in your own capacity and trust in the notion that there are still good human beings and that, who are worthy of help. So when someone says that they don't have money to buy something, trust, take that at a face value and give that person whatever you can give. And it will always end in, good outcome. And so that is what we need to, that's the fundamental notion of, understanding chaos that exists at the micro level, at the meso level, at the macro level. Can we come together as a nation to galvanize in the capacities that we have for increasing the opportunities for security for our children, for our own children, and for children in the world. We have withdrawn the funding for this health of so many children who relied on USAID funding. And that had benefits for not just those countries, for United States and for the world. And now we are doing away with CDC's, protection and World Health Organizations, research-based, evidence-based information. That is going to create so much more chaos. So constantly, we are being exposed to chaos in a way as if chaos is the normal way of life. So we are getting so used to it. We are constantly, adjusting ourselves, not only to the need for updating our brain capacity. Like I didn't have to learn the internet when I was teaching in Delhi because there was no internet, right? In the 80s. I was doing my doctoral program at Berkeley and they took us all to this library one day and said, here is the World Wide Web, early part of 1990. And we were all amazed and HTML and all that. And even at that time, I never thought that we would have all this information at our fingertips. And now we have AI, where AI could produce, synthesize so much information. But again, you talked of DEI suppression, Jose, and I want to draw attention to the bias in AI. AI is simply processing regurgitated material. I mean, of course, enormous amount of material that it is processing in such lightning speed and giving us synthesis. But sometimes that synthesized material could be full of biased, nuanced, material that if someone is not careful enough can trust those. And, the level of hallucination of AI has come down. But nevertheless, are we training our children, even as we allow them, even our students, to use AI, the importance of not creating information that is biased, that is could be potentially lethal for some groups of our societal members, and could be loaded with potentially undermining processes of development and emancipation that we have achieved in our society for women, for members of minority groups, and first generation, second generation immigrants, and for economic mobility, for occupational mobility, and for religious freedom, and for protecting the rights guaranteed by our constitution. And so therefore we are living absolutely in challenging times, and the chaos meter goes up and down. Sometimes it's very high, sometimes it's relatively quiet. But with the federal workforce being interfered with, and so many of them having left their jobs, and and then some of them being brought back, and our own capacity for having a healthy foreign policy being, continuously being, I'm not saying it's impacted, but continuously being, revised. I'm not saying there wasn't government waste. Yes, but there is a way to go about fixing that. There is a methodical process of respecting the rights of our workers, our citizens, protecting their sense of security, their well being, before we demolish everything that we've built over generations. So these are chaotic times, and these are times where we want to have an integrative approach as opposed to compartmentalized, piecemeal, divisive approach. And that's why we need to focus on this process of self actualization of not only our children but adults as well as a goal, as opposed to some utopia. It's not an utopia. It has to be an urgent goal. What will we have to ask ourselves? Policy planners have to ask themselves, what does every American child first needs in order to self-actualize their potentials, in order to have the security of their biological needs, their social needs, their emotional needs, their capacity for seeing themselves as worthy of celebration, dignity, and then to be able to self actualize their potentials? Are we producing those opportunities? If we are not, we are failing them. It's as simple as that. And so, cultivating this integrative intelligence to have this overarching approach for as our goal would be very helpful to live amicably.
Thank you. Thank you so much for just the insightful insights into everything that's going on. And hopefully we
Yeah.
can all learn to move a little gentler, slower, kinder, not only with each other, but with ourselves. It's we're always rushing is what I find. We're always trying to figure out what's the fastest way to get from A to B, as opposed to thinking, what are we missing out on?
Mhm.
I, uh, or what is the actual experience of getting from A to B?
Exactly. Absolutely. That's it. What is the actual experience? That in itself is worth 100%,
Yeah.
the totality of it, being in that moment. And yeah, sorry for
No, no,
interrupting.
no, thank you. Yeah, it's just enjoying the journey. It's a process. It's we especially in this we live in a society where it's about winning, preparing to get that A, especially in academia, passing
Yeah.
something. But sometimes we forget to talk about the experience of going through that process, whether it's good, it's bad, it's ugly, it's traumatic. You talked about normalcy a little bit, and that key word always just throws me off because I was like, what is truly normal? Like, there's who is to say what is normal? Because we have so much. I mean, I just thinking about like if I were to break down my life into decades, what was considered normal during those decades, they're all going to be different. It's
Mm.
nothing is going to be the same. Um, and so just being, but part of that, you learn how to, uh, some people say resilience, some people say survive. Um, you learn to cope with the complexities, the chaos, call it what you will. But yeah, no, thank you. Just briefly to get upon I know we talked a little bit about universities, but I wonder if you might have a little more to say about what role do you see universities playing in formulating conditions conducive to knowing the self, shedding the fear of the unknown, and creating conditions for self-actualization of the being and the human experience. Just because, as I've been talking, the way it's an antiquated system that
Mhm.
many of the ways higher education was set up is still very much alive. And so it is, you do something to get this prize, your degree,
Mm,
right? Or get that A. Um, so yeah, I mean, it kind of reminds me about when um, I sometimes share this story about Senator Sparky Matsunaga and how he almost 100 years ago now, back in 1939, he was a student here at the University
mm,
of Hawaii, and he talked about if you want peace, you must educate people to want peace. And part of his talk was a larger conversation about how we tend to have great admiration and honor when people say they're joining the military, they're going to war, but
mm,
we don't give that same type of appreciation from people say I'm choosing to do peace work. And
mm,
so simultaneously,
mm,
give great appreciation when people accomplish something, they get that A. But for those folks who are not getting those A's, who are not
mm.
graduating, we're not having those conversations with them. We're just like, oh, you failed. Okay, next. Or you'll figure something else out. But
Yeah,
it's not having that deeper
absolutely. Yeah,
conversation about the self. But
yeah.
I'll let you take it away though.
No, no, no. That is absolutely brilliant. Why do we not say that's okay, you failed? Let's just say, I mean, Dr. Seuss, for instance, the famous children's books author, got 28 times his children's book rejected before he was able to publish his first children's book. So had he given up, 28 times, that is this power of human spirit, human resilience. So I wondered, who was it who gave him that level of resilience, that level of, support, or maybe it was just internal, it's all intra-psychic power and capacity, we don't know. Yeah.
I think part of it,
And
uh,
twice,
I
sorry, go.
sorry, one thing that kind of rung to mind right now was the words that we're using. Why do we have to use fail? Like,
Exactly.
why
That
can't
I
we
was coming to
something else?
that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So, is it failure? Is it just a process of approaching an event, if it's an exam, or if it is a test, or if it was a project? Is it really a failure? We are having an encounter with that process. Everything is an interaction of a being with a process that is set up by someone else. So, at the university systems, I cannot believe we still have timed exams. I think that is absolutely nonsense because nobody is holding with the clock, okay, come and find a solution for this within such a short time. Yes, in healthcare, we have to time procedures, we have to time surgeries, but even there, they have to learn it thoroughly to so many times and reproduce it in a way that gives them confidence, not rote learning and regurgitation within a timed process. It doesn't help anyone, but we still do that. And many children are almost traumatized by it. Professor Steele from Stanford, Claude Steele, I think. Oh, and Shelby Steele is his brother, but Claude, many years ago, did a study on stereotype vulnerability. And he did, several groups like Asian students, African American students, and Caucasian students, and take them timed test, and put them in the same room. When it came to language-based exams, Caucasian students did very well, but Asian students did not do well. And students who identified as African American heritage and Latinx did reasonably well. But when it came to mathematics, a test based purely on mathematics, not because student groups like African American students who were excelling in math until then, when it was a time test, simply being in the presence of Asian students and Caucasian students, their test scores came down dramatically, dramatically enough to be significant to say the simply being seen as not good at math, or simply being seen the stereotype of Asian students as being very good at math, simply being in taking an exam under timed conditions at the same time creates this vulnerability to stereotype. And he coined his concepts of stereotype vulnerability and stereotype threat. That in itself can act as impediments to success even if you are very good at what you do. And this, I have experienced it myself in me, because it's something that we are programmed to deal with. And I see it in my students. So I'm very careful not to give any timed test, you know, especially since we have Canvas. Ever since Canvas came in, we can measure that students can do well on their own, and and to treat them as adults who are capable of accomplishment goes a long way in their achievement. And I'm not saying there are the exception of one or two students who would like to take the easy route and doesn't work hard. They are there, but they are very rare than actually, believed to be, and they defy all stereotyped conceptions of who they are. So therefore, having this notion of doing away with the diversity, equity, inclusion programs. And we don't even have to call it as diversity. It is essentially access, providing access. In the case of timed exam, you're providing access to an environment. They are free of stereotypes when you don't give timed exam in the same room with members of stereotype groups. And when I was at Berkeley, one day I saw, sort of pamphlets everywhere. Yeah, I am Asian, just distributed, because these positive stereotypes also are simply stereotypes. There are students from certain groups who are positively stereotyped as being good at math, on the dean's list, play the piano, and it's at all of the same thing in that pamphlet. But I'm not any of these. But I am expected to perform all of this. I don't have any interest. Not me, I'm saying the pamphlets, talked about, well, it was generated by a group of students who belong to a certain ethnic group, and said, we are none of this. We don't want to subscribe to this positive stereotypes. We just want to be ourselves, but we are expected to be this. And that should not be, it's not professors, it's by their own fellow students, peers. So possible stereotypes, whether they are positive or negative, create unnecessary pressure, create unnecessary exclusions, and create unnecessary stress in a process, educational pursuit, which should be empowering. So the words we use absolutely matter. How we learn, have different styles of learning. Our learning style should be identified, and accordingly, we should be, led to learn the best way possible. There we still borrow this British style of system. And when they introduced it in India, Lord Macaulay said, we want British and worldview and viewpoint and opinion, but they may be Indians in blood and color, but we want the British worldview and opinion. I'm paraphrasing. Lord Macaulay, who created the Indian education system, supposedly that's what he said. So in here too, we also keep in the British system of education, we have made some modifications to this and that, such as student-centered learning and project-based learning. Many universities do that, but they're still not a widely practiced, process. Case simulation method, which Harvard uses phenomenally well. I use project-based learning and student-centered learning, but only in the recent years when I have been able to make myself fully comfortable in using those approaches. And so therefore, the entire education system, university needs to see the student as an empowered learner. Empowerment has to be the process of going with it, and not and a sense of calmness, a sense of equanimity to that process, a mind frame of integrative intelligence. I don't know whether you have heard this, Jose, but where Lord Buddha, when his father, of course, protected him, he was a prince and kept him. He didn't want him to be introduced to, the seeing people with who are in their old age and poverty or disease. Then one day he said for his birthday he wanted to go out of his palace and see, and he saw an old man, and he saw someone in poverty, and he saw someone who was diseased, and he asked his charioteer, what is that? And he said, so he explained to him, and he gave up everything and wanted to know the truth of life. What is the path of life? What is the real secret of life? What are the truths, cardinal truths? And then he didn't eat for a long time, and he sacrificed his body and all of that. But finally he was sitting under a tree, and he asked someone for some food and water. And his disciples scoffed at him because the person whom he accepted the food and the water was not supposedly a respectable person, but he took it anyway and he ate it. And then, just at that time, supposedly, a little like a boat, river boat, he was sitting by a river, was passing by, and the river boat was a master musician and his disciple. His disciple was trying to tune like an instrument, like something like a guitar, like Indian version of it. And so he was tightening it, and his master said, be careful. If you tighten it too much, it will break. But if you loosen it too much, it will be flat. So therefore, you won't play. So be just at the right, tune, just at the right equanimity. And that was his realization. He said, in life, don't be attached to anything, just do what you're doing because it is equanimous. It's equanimity. Everything is equanimous. Everything is balanced. And so essentially, he was integrating the scientific principle of what Freud said as, eros and ethos and love and hate, and, what, Jesus taught as, love is the send, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And if people cannot love themselves, how can they love their neighbor? And love your God above everything and love your neighbor. I mean, everything is based on this creative energy of love, which is when you have this integrative intelligence, there is this enormous sense of love that goes to everything. You see everything as every interaction as a love-based interaction. There's nothing else that matters. And then we are constantly being enriched, constantly being inspired, constantly being motivated, which is what Maslow said. It is a motivational hierarchy of needs where you are motivated once your physical needs are met to have security and have belonging and self-esteem and self-actualization, this transcendental self-actualization. And this is the beauty of life. And our children come into this world knowing this. Somehow, our education system actually unteaches them of the truths that they already know. And I saw it in my children, I saw it in my grandchildren because I spent time with them. And last week, and when we approach life, irrespective of whether we have money or not, I'll stop with this simple story. It's not a story, it's something that happened, just like a few days ago. I was going from my place, not from my son's place, to my daughter's place. And so I was taking an Uber, and, some migrants from, some countries sell flowers at the traffic stops. That they place themselves and they, sell flowers. And I was so moved by this person who was going from car to car selling flowers, and some people want. So I fortunately normally don't carry cash. I had some cash and I said, oh, this is great. So I bought beautiful bouquet of flowers, and relatively so inexpensive. I was wondering, how is he going to make any money off of it? And so anyway, I took the flowers and I went to my daughter's home. And my youngest granddaughter, when he saw me, oh, sir, they call me Amma Flowers. And so I said, yeah, for you, darling. And she took it and she said, what are you doing? She said, well, I'm packing. I said, where are you going? Oh, going to the beach. They're going to the beach only July 4th weekend, but they're leaving this Saturday. This was, maybe 10 days ago. Oh, going to the beach. I'm already packing. You want to? And she has a little water bottle and little toy and a little dress. And then she took the flowers and, oh, then we can all go. And she wanted to include me in that. I'm like, I had things to do. And, I'm so glad that my daughter and her husband and children get to, go to the beach and stay at the beach house, their beach house, and my son-in-law's family's beach house, and because it's a reprieve from everything. But she wanted to include me and said she wanted this to be an expansive experience. And the way she said it, oh, maybe we can all go, and repeat it. And that sense of love, I think, sorry. Sorry. And so this sense of love that came with that process, I think when children are raised with that concept of understanding of love, and we don't take away this enormous process that they come with, then that is conducive to integrative intelligence. That is conducive to, self-actualization. So I'm going to stop here. I think our universities need to go back and say, yes, we are welcoming these students into our campus. How do we help them self-actualize? How do we help them develop an integrative approach to life? How do we take them? And my California State University does a phenomenal job of removing food insecurity, removing housing insecurity as much as possible. And it's a public university, providing health care service and providing financial emergency assistance. So every university has to do that, but we can't do that when even the meager resources that are given to them are being taken away by the federal government and the Department of Education is being destroyed. And so I'm not political in this. I'm just saying there is a process that we need to follow when we want our society to be healthy, self-actualizing, and to be capable of integrative intelligence. Yeah. Thank you for being such an active listener
No,
and
no,
for
thank you.
organizing this.
Thank you so much for guiding us along and, just bringing this topic to today. It's just so timely with everything that's going on. But as I had mentioned earlier, for folks listening, whether you listen to this right after, a couple days after it's come out, or if you listen to it, um, I teach some classes, and I always reflect upon the commentary I give to the class as a whole, and I try to kind of weave in what I'm teaching with what's happening in life, society, and I was ref I went back to like 5 years ago with the global pandemic, trying to be timely, cautious, and kind in my wording as I'm reaching it, because really all the students have sometimes is just the message that I've. So it's choosing the right words, and it was odd, surprising, nostalgic, but also just kind of sad at the same time that I was like, oh, s- this message from 5 years ago is still very much applicable today.
Mhm.
And so I think that is why I kind of share this conversation. I think is the one that's going to be timely. Time
Mhm.
meaning timeless. That's what I really mean. So thank
Oh,
you so much
absolutely. Yeah.
for joining us today and how we explored integrative intelligence, also the emotions that relate to it, the systems, the cultural intelligence as it converges. It's yes, there's much work to be done, and I hope that for folks who are listening, it leaves them with, because I know there's more we can keep talking about it, but it leaves them
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
ideas as to like, how could I, take a pause, take a step back, and rework some of the things that I currently do. When we talk
Mhm.
about positive peace, we talk about it being actionable. How do we get proactive as opposed to reactive in the work that we're doing? And that's really what it's all about, being a little bit more compassionate and empathetic in our everyday steps, not only in our interactions with others, but also just our interactions with ourselves. Because you talked about it earlier, I you didn't say it this way, but I always say in these words where like, if you can't take care of yourself, you got to take care of yourself before you take care of others.
Exactly. Because
Really,
we cannot give what we do not have. It's just as
yeah,
much as we
yeah,
have to love ourselves and take care of ourselves, then we can give that. And I
yeah.
absolutely believe it. And Gandhi said the same thing. If you cannot do something, do not teach it, do not practice it. I'm not saying we're all perfect beings, but that is, you're absolutely right. Yes.
And at the same time, it's not as though you need to like go out there and learn everything. There's
Yeah,
certain things that we're more highly capable of, but I think we agree upon with empathy and compassion, we can meet people halfway at least.
exactly.
Try to
Yeah.
understand. I mean,
Yeah.
if you have never been an immigrant, if you've never been a refugee, uh, that's you could still though take time to listen to those stories and try to meet halfway and learn about that perspective, that lived experience, and simultaneously question, oh, you know, what privilege do we have that we live with
Mhm.
every day that we may not even acknowledge?
Exactly. Yeah.
Sometimes you hear the basics of like the fact you can turn on the faucet and drink the water
Yeah.
from that
Yeah.
is a privilege in itself. So
It's a
the
huge
fact that
privilege.
you can
Yeah.
breathe some fresh air,
Mhm.
wake up, and for the most part go to bed and realize you're gonna wake up tomorrow.
Mhm.
That's a privilege in itself. So just kind of getting down to the basics, I think. So thank you so much for
You are so
reminding us
welcome.
of the beauty of
Yes.
life and for these ongoing conversations. And I definitely look forward to our next one. Thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Jose. Thank
Yeah.
you.